Whoa, Vicky, we're back with another episode of the Jack Wagon Sports Podcast. Nick loves when I do stupid white shit. But we were excited to bring this episode to you guys. We have a packed show. We thought we were done with NASCAR, and then NASCAR releases a bunch of news this week. So we're getting into that. We got college football, NFL, a little bit of hockey. And with Thanksgiving coming up next week, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about Thanksgiving. So let's go ahead. Let's just get right into the show for this week. Let's start off with NASCAR, like we talked about. A little bit of surprising news came out just today. We're recording this on Wednesday. So Cole Custer, there was rumors throughout the season that he was either going to be done at Stewart-Haas after the year. They're kind of not happy with how he was performing. Um, they were going to try and bring in some other drivers. There was a lot of talk of them going after Kyle Busch pretty heavily to try and bring him to Stewart-Haas Racing for next season. That did not pan out, and so we kind of thought, all the rumors had calmed down. Eric Almirola said he was not going to retire, so we figured, okay, Stewart-Haas is going to stay the exact same for next season. All of a sudden, it's announced today, Cole Custer will be returning to the Xfinity Series, still with Stewart-Haas Racing, but he will go back to the Xfinity Series for next year. And Ryan Preece will get promoted to full-time Cup racing for Stewart-Haas Racing. In my eyes, this is just lining them up. I believe Preece only had a one-year contract to be kind of their reserve driver. They really liked how he performed this year in that kind of reserve role. I believe he filled in for Eric at one point in the regular season. Did really good with the trucks and Xfinity races as well. But I think they wanted to keep him under that umbrella, not necessarily lose him. Didn't want him to sit a full year in Xfinity. Cole Custer has definitely underperformed in the Cup Series, like we said. Hey, let's keep him under contract too. And I think with Harvick retiring at the end of next year, okay, we got to see. We'll just slide Custer back up, let him go get another year of confidence under him and get ready. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on everything that happened and where you see this going from here. Slade, we'll go with you first.
Yeah, so I think the more interesting part of this situation for these two drivers is that when Cole Custer came up, they originally wanted Ryan Preece to be the guy in that seat. Tony Stewart wanted Ryan Preece, and Gene Haas wanted Cole Custer. And the 41 car has been sponsored by Haas Automotive, whatever, Gene Haas's company, for the entirety that Cole Custer's been there. It's been the main sponsor. He's also had a couple of other sponsors that have graced the hood, but not to the same length that Gene Haas has supported that car. Um, it's come out also today that Gene Haas won the driver pick because he was going to fork over the money to sponsor the car, since neither of these drivers really had like hard sponsorship to come and race here. The Daughtry team or whatever, where Ryan Preece had
ATG,
raced.
yeah.
Uh, all the sponsorships there, Continental, Kroger, all those are sponsors that are through that team. These
Mhm.
drivers aren't being sponsored by those companies, so it's a little different than like Harvick having Busch Light and like Hunt Brothers Pizza and stuff like that. Which Ryan Preece also has Hunt Brothers Pizza because his management team is Kevin Harvick and his wife.
Yeah.
So Ricky Stenhouse, they both manage those two. Or Kevin Harvick and his wife have a management team, and so they manage big names like Ricky Stenhouse and Ryan Preece. And so a lot of these sponsorships they haven't been able to bring with them throughout the entirety of their career because they've kind of needed to be helped out with that part of the deal. They're great drivers or good drivers with respect to the other guys. But yeah, it's just interesting to see that Tony Stewart has kind of won that battle now. Like they played that, let's see how Cole Custer does, and it didn't really work out. He kind of underperformed to what was expected, and it's just a bad look. I think that they didn't pick up Kyle Busch. I think that that's what they need to do. It seems like Kevin Harvick has also come out and said that they need to go out and get a big name, and it just didn't happen. So they're just left with the small amount of cars that they have in the Ford, um, I guess like driver portfolio. So I mean, it was Ryan Preece or Haley Deegan.
Yeah. Nick, any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to this. Just yeah, it sucks that somebody had to get demoted, but he didn't have that, anywhere near a good year. I'm sure that their expectations were a lot higher for him, like Slade said. Biggest thing is now, obviously, a new driver is going to get that opportunity. Hopefully he makes the most out of it, gives Stuart Haas a little something to be excited about, and maybe make Tony Stewart look real good after the season. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Priest can do. I didn't think he was terrible in the JTG equipment he had. I mean, we all know that's not top level, equipment he's getting there. But I feel like he did a really good job. Kind of got pushed out, due to some of those sponsorship issues, and so forth. So I'm excited to see what he can do with the second chance. In his press release today, he said you're never guaranteed a second chance in NASCAR, and so he wants to make the most of this opportunity. Like I said, Cole Custer is going to be back. I think he'll be fine. He could definitely use a little bit more development. I honestly, as a Stewart Haas fan, I wouldn't hate seeing them drop down to 2 or even 3 cars. Um, you could tell there is a clear difference between, and maybe it is 100% behind the wheel. I don't want to say that though, but you can tell there's a huge drop off from the 4 to the 14 to the 10 to the 41. And so I would like to see them, in the future consolidate that down. I know it's nice having 4 cars, 4 teammates out there on the track together, but at what point are you expanding your resources beyond what they're capable of? Speaking of teams that might be cutting down on cars in the near future, I kind of brought this up to you earlier, Slade, in our little group chat. So it was announced Ty Gibbs is 100% going to be moving up to the NASCAR Cup Series next year. There will not be an 18 car though. It will be the number 54 car as he raced in the Xfinity Series this year. It'll be sponsored by Monster. So that gives Gibbs his 4 cars. As of right now, they do not have an Xfinity driver announced. Brandon Jones left to go to Junior Motorsports for next season in the Xfinity Series. So there's no Xfinity driver at Gibbs Racing right now. It's heavily rumored. It's all but confirmed, I should say. Martin Truex Jr. next season will be his last season. A lot of people speculated it might be this year. He said, "I'm going to come back for one more at least." So it's more than likely there will be down to 3 cars after next year. Denny Hamlin has his own team, and I don't want to say his performance dropped off this year, but it definitely was a down year compared to what he's had in the past. But he said in the past, I'm going to retire eventually. Who knows when that's coming? So I just want to get you guys' thoughts on what you think the future of Joe Gibbs Racing is. Do you think they eventually just start cutting down on cars, or are they a big enough draw still? And we talked about this with the sponsorships, especially on the Ryan Preece side. It's hard for NASCAR across the board to draw big name sponsors in, to have them on the car for year round, or get 3 or 4. M&M's is now leaving, or Mars Candy, the producer of M&M's, is leaving the sport entirely. And we've seen many sponsors over the past few years, Lowe's, Home Depot, big names like that leave the sport entirely. And so teams are having to look to these. We saw plenty of teams look at cryptocurrencies, and we see how that's going right now with FTX, and these other off the wall sponsorships is what I'll call them. But Nick, I just want to get your thoughts on if you think Gibbs will downsize in the future, or where you see that going.
Yeah, so I think logistically speaking, downsizing would probably be the better option for them. The only way that I could see, I think a lot of teams might end up downsizing here in the next coming years. I think the only way that you avoid that is to draw in more of those big sponsors. And quite frankly, the only way to do that is to get more people watching the sport. We kind of talked about it a lot this season. NASCAR is kind of on the right track, but there's still some things, like their crappy playoff format and their inconsistent, what's the word I'm looking for here? Execution of their rules and penalties. So they got to get all that, wrapped up, tied together, whatever. Get more people watching again. Then some of those sponsorships are going to come to you, and they're going to want to get their name out there on the hood of your cars or whatever. But at least for me, the way I see it and the trajectory that I think NASCAR is going, I think, like I said, eventually we're going to see a couple teams possibly downsize a car too.
Slade, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that there's a lot going on with this here. Like you said, we could see Joe Gibbs downsize. They don't have anyone named for Xfinity. Here's the reason they don't have anyone named for Xfinity. They lost Kyle Busch, and what was more than just having Kyle Busch there is their feeder program, which was his Truck Series team. His Truck Series team is already announced they're going to Chevy also. He signed the whole deal. He and his team are going to Chevy. Um, so they lost their feeder program. It's going to be very hard for them to pick up Xfinity drivers when you're having to source from all different areas now throughout the Truck Series or ARCA. If you want them to just skip the Truck Series entirely, whatever the deal is there. Um, I think that they are going to end up just putting someone that isn't ready to be in the Cup Series into Joe Gibbs's 4th car at some point. I don't think they're gonna downsize necessarily. I think the only team that's not going to downsize at all is Hendrick Motorsports, and that's because they've locked their drivers up for 3 years minimum, I think is what's going on there. I could definitely see Stewart Haas going down to 2 cars. Tony Stewart's got so much going on outside of just NASCAR that it would make sense for him and Gene Haas to be able to allocate their funds to the other things that they have their money into. And then also, it's I Nick had said he could see a lot of different teams like kind of downsizing and stuff like that. I agree. I think that there's so many people that want to get into the sport right now, just not enough spots. I mean, there's also problems like Dale Jr. There's been a lot of talk about him starting Cup Series team or going in with someone like say Richard Childress or something like that to kind of do a dual team, sort of like Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan. But then you have problems with, like, he can't go into the Cup Series at all right now because Rick Hendrick owns a part of his Xfinity team. So unless he's going in halves with Rick Hendrick, he can't own a Cup Series team and half own an Xfinity Series team with another owner, you know? So there's just so much going on. I think that we're gonna see a lot over this next season with different teams, um, just different feeder programs that are gonna have to start up in these lower levels because they can't get a spot in the Cup Series right now, which may help out teams like Joe Gibbs.
Yeah. And just another thing I want to bring up. Two things. One thing that you talked about. Another thing I just want to bring up on its own. Is with Hendrick is even if they wanted to switch drivers or whatever, they are still very well funded. Their top 4 drivers have good sponsorships. I mean, you could even 3 of them I would argue have really good sponsorships. Kyle Larson is still struggling in my eyes to pull in more big names. He still runs 80% of his races in just the HendrickParts.com car.
And the other one's
Um,
Valvoline.
yeah, but, he is winning enough races and Hendrick is making enough money where it's a profitable deal for him to just, "Hey, we're just gonna slap Hendrick on the side of the car, go out there and run these races, finish well enough, you pull in enough winnings, and we're fine." So clearly that has worked out. I don't think he could do that with any other driver. I mean, obviously, add that he has now, or that he doesn't have, excuse me. Like, I don't think you could slap a Ryan Preece in that car, do the same thing, and expect the same results. Um and then just back to Joe Gibbs real quick, and I don't wanna bring this up in a, uh, out of touch way. I wanna bring this up respectfully, but, looking to the future of Joe Gibbs Racing, he has just lost his 2nd son now. These were his sons that he was grooming to take over his company eventually. Obviously, JD Gibbs basically ran the 11 car for years, before his passing, and Coy, had a huge hand in bringing up Ty Gibbs. He was a huge part of, Gibbs Motorsports as a whole, and now, unfortunately with his passing as well, you kind of look around at it, outside of keeping it at 4 cars, is Gibbs still interested in, hey, let's keep building this thing for the future? Is it, hey, let's one by one, let's go ahead and just drop this off and somebody else can eventually take this over. Again, don't mean to be distasteful with that, but just something to kind of think of going forward with all this talk about. Okay, they don't have an Xfinity driver right now. There's a driver that's going to retire probably in a year. Another one, I would say, definitely within 5 years, and then you're left with 2 really good young drivers. Um, could make it easy to bring a potential buyer in or leave the organization in good hands going forward if that's how they want to handle it. But that's enough NASCAR talk for this week. We're going to go ahead. We're going to look at the NHL point standings real quick and just see how everybody's doing it so far. Pittsburgh has finally figured out how to win a game or two, and then we just lost back-to-back games the last 2 nights. So it's still rough out here, but we're better than the Anaheim Ducks at least. Uh, but before we get into the points, Nick, how are you feeling about the Kraken?
Yeah, pretty much about the same as I felt at the last point that you asked. I think that we're a good offensive team. 2 of which should be our main contributors haven't really stepped up to where we thought they would be yet. And they're close. Talking about Burakovsky and uh, Bjorkstrand, and I almost lost his name for a second there. Um, they've put some points up. They've scored some goals, but not kind of what we expected. And they're putting shots on goal. The other night, I can't remember who we were playing, but I'd say probably 6 is a very conservative number. 6 shots off the post, which is absolutely heartbreaking. If you've never watched that many shots go off the post, it was terrible. I heart attack after heart attack. But no, I think we're in a good place, especially in our second year. Um, trying to have reasonable expectations, but it's definitely exciting to see where we're at.
Slade, your thoughts on the Blues?
They suck to start the season, let's be honest.
Yeah.
They're playing right now against the Blackhawks when we're recording this. They're winning 4-2 at the end of the second right now, I think. If they're able to win, that would put them at 7-8 on the season, which right now is still gonna have them in last in the Central. Are they in the Central?
Central, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I don't know what to think. I mean, obviously, it's
If
early and there's a ton of games left, but, I mean, I was really hoping for at least, like, I don't know, maybe a 10-6 start or something like that, but we just can't get there right now.
Yeah. I mean, the good news is for them, so they're sitting at 12 points right now. Uh, they're only one spot out of not being in last place in their division. But the next team, so far, the team locked into the playoffs, if the playoffs were to start today, would be the Avs at 17 points in that division. So you're only 5 points technically out of the playoffs right now, if you look at it that way. So obviously, that like I keep trying to tell myself with the Penguins, it's so early in the season. A lot of these teams are still trying to work out the new trades, draft picks, so on and so forth. I think a lot of these guys are going to be fine. Let's go ahead and look at the points, though. Starting in the Atlantic Division, the Bruins, best team in the NHL right now, 28 points. Maple Leafs 21, Panthers 19, Lightning 19, Red Wings 18, Canadians 17, Sabres 14, and Sens 11. Uh, Very impressed with how the Bruins have started the season. I think I said this last week. I did not expect them to start off this well, and Marchand was not supposed to come back for a few more weeks. He has came back and just looked like his old self, fresh out the gate, which is scary to say. Um, in the Metro Division, probably the surprising team of the year so far has been the Devils. They're currently on a 10-game win streak. They're playing really good hockey right now. Plus 21 goal differential, which is just absurd at this point in the season. Um, and so they lead the Metro with 26 points. The Islanders, again, another team that has looked really good so far to start the season, with 22 points. The Hurricanes have 21. The Rangers have 19. The Flyers have 17. The Caps have 16. Penguins have 15. And the Blue Jackets have 11 points. So, again, as a Penguins fan, I'm sitting there looking, okay, yeah, we're next to last in our division. But, hey, we are, 4 points, out of being ahead of New York or the Rangers, I should say. So plenty of time left. Like I said, we finally started winning. We did not look good at all last night. That was difficult to watch against the Maple Leafs. In the Central Division, Dallas leads the way with 20 points. The Jets have 19. The Avs have 17. The Wild 16. Blackhawks 15. Preds 15. Coyotes 13 and the Blues 12. Slated the Blues beat the Avalanche the other night. I watched like the first period of that game.
No idea. I was working. I'll check there real quick.
Okay. All right, you looked that up. And the Pacific Division, again, Vegas
3-2.
continues to make us they won
won.
or lost. Oh,
Won.
well, there you go. Pacific Division, again, Vegas continues to make us eat our words. They have 26 points right now. The Kings have 21. The Kraken have 19. Oilers 18. Flames 16. Sharks 15. Canucks 13. And again, the worst team in the NHL so far. The Anaheim Ducks with only 11 points. They did pick up a win last night, though, so good for them.
They do not have a win in regulation yet, though.
That is correct, yes.
I seen that today. I was like, ain't no way.
So that wraps or gives you a quick update on where the NHL sits right now. We're still trying to pick a game that we can all get to here soon and bring that to you guys. So let's go ahead. Let's shift over to the NFL. Slade, you had a couple questions for Nick and his victorious Washington Commanders after they pick up a huge Monday night win.
I knew this was going to be about this.
Shocking to watch, but I'm all for it.
Yeah, so I think it was really great that they were able to get the win and everything like that. But I mean, is it just because of what the team's going through with Dan Snyder right now that they can't afford to get the guys in first class, or what's the deal? Because I mean, we saw the video of Kirk Cousins in first class with the chains and everything like that. And obviously, they were trying to do the same thing with Taylor Heineke, but it was hard to watch him sit in the same Delta seats that I sit in, and have a plastic garbage can with Busch Light in them next to him. Like,
Oh yeah,
they can't even get this man, like, they couldn't even the stewardess can't even be bringing a beer, like, or
yeah.
2 beers at a time, like, no, they just have a 12-pack in a garbage can next to him.
Yeah, so I assume that we just have no money. I don't know if you guys had heard, but that I think it was from like week one. The one fan won a 50-50 and the check bounced when he went to cash it. I assume that Dan Snyder probably embezzled a bunch of money for his go bag. That way he can get out of town. So maybe that's why we can only afford coach. It'd be nice if they were at least flying a good airline, but I guess you take what you can get. I love Taylor
He's
Heineke though, just sitting there with the trash can with the double fist in the beer. I love that kid. Love
I
him. I
he's
mean,
should
in
say
in
Kai. I'm
in
pretty
their
sure he's older than
defense,
me.
though, it's gotta be like what, like a 20-minute flight from Philly to DC.
Yeah,
So they're like,
like
yeah, we're not gonna splurge.
they're like,
yeah,
"Ah, yeah, we already test our life walking into FedEx Field. We're gonna just, fly Spirit."
yeah. I imagine that it probably, especially that 20-minute flight, probably cost the same as what like an hour flight of first class would. So who knows? Airlines are weird, but yeah, definitely we gotta get the boys. It ain't no wonder that we're sitting at 5-5. We're flying coach. So
Yeah. But we have not talked NFL in a few weeks. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts on where the season has progressed to this point. Buffalo, who Nick and I actually I believe all three of us picked to kind of be our Super Bowl winner or Super Bowl representative in the AFC. Does not look terrible, but they could definitely let a couple games that they should not have lost slip through their fingers. They lost to the Jets last week. They lose arguably the best game of the season we've had so far to the Vikings at home. And again, great catch by Justin Jefferson. Just I don't even understand how to explain that fumble on the goal line. But just your thoughts overall on how teams have looked, what teams are surprising you. We're a little over halfway into the season now. So just how Nick, I'll start with you. How do you feel about your picks? For division winners, Super Bowl, teams, all that so forth. A little over halfway into the season.
yeah, so I don't have them in front of me, and I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. But one that sticks out is definitely the Bills. Like you said, I think I don't believe they're in first in their division anymore. I think the Dolphins took that over. Are they third? Okay, I knew they were, or I thought they were at least second. I didn't know exactly what they were. Yeah, they look good. They don't look great. They don't look like the Super Bowl contenders we hyped them up to be in the preseason. Now, granted, as time gets closer to the playoffs, I think they're going to wrap it up. The biggest thing for me is Josh Allen. He's got a great arm, and he can lead that team to beat anybody else in the league. But we've seen, I believe, he's thrown 6 picks total in the last 3 games, and I think only 3 touchdowns, I believe. So he's definitely going to want to get that cleared up. That's not going to win you Super Bowls. I had another one in mind, and I totally am blanking on it right now. Uh, yeah. I'll just move over to the biggest surprise. The biggest surprise for me is the Minnesota Vikings. Not because like I had them winning their division this year, but they're sitting at 8-1. Uh, should be 8-2, but my team sucks. They're 7-2, sorry. But no, Kirk Cousins, when he's not playing in prime time, is playing great football. Unfortunately for him, all playoff games are pretty much played in prime time. So sorry about that. But I think that the Vikings have faced a lot of adversity this year, and they've overcome that adversity. Especially if you look at the game against us, we were up by like 7, I think, with just a couple minutes left in the fourth, and they stuck together. They ended up coming back, winning the game on the road, which obviously granted us Kirk Thuggins or Kirk Thuggins, whatever you want to call him, which might be one of my favorite NFL characters of all time now. But yeah, it's been a really wild NFL season in my opinion. It's very hard. Like for example, betting. I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm probably not going to place another dollar on the NFL for the rest of the season because it is just absolutely nuts. You can't trust anybody, and the teams that you think you can trust to be terrible somehow win games. So yeah, it's entertaining to say the least. I think that's what's kind of kept me in it because we've talked before about the refing kind of killing the game and all the politics off the field and stuff like that. But it's been an interesting season to say the least, and I can't wait for playoff time.
Slade, your thoughts on the season so far?
So just on the Buffalo part in itself, I mean, it's crazy to think that what we saw happen last year, between the Chiefs and the Bills. I mean, it was heartbreak for the Bills, and the overtime thing that had happened to the Chiefs the year before, I believe, and like there was a lot of back and forth in the offseason about that stuff, and then like they come out and it's like, oh wow, I mean, like the Chiefs are looking like crap without Tyreek Hill at the beginning, like compared to what they were previously. And so it's like, oh wow, the Bills might be able to get home field advantage, and then the Bills go out and beat the Chiefs in their first game and their only game of the season that they'll play. And it's like, "Oh, wow, the Bills are finally gonna get this game in Buffalo." And now, I mean, they've played 2 divisional games and lost both of them. They're 0-2. They've lost to the Bill or to the Jets and the Dolphins. I mean, they'll play each team again this season, but, oh my, I mean, if they would lose to both of those teams again and then split with maybe the Patriots, I mean, you're looking at them staying in the 3rd spot, possibly going back to the 4th, depending on how the Patriots play out the rest of their season. I mean, it's just crazy to think that they finally got that win against the Chiefs to give themselves home field advantage, and now they're kind of squandering that home field advantage. At least I think that they're still going to make the playoffs and be able to make a deep run, but it's also questionable with the news that had come out about Josh Allen's elbow and stuff. I mean, it didn't seem to affect him too much, but I think the most surprising team to me is the Steelers. No, I'm kidding. I I think that it's gonna be really interesting to see. I mean, I saw a thing that said that the whole East could make the playoffs possibly. I don't know that that's gonna happen, but that and the going theory that Tom Brady could literally start out the playoffs, um, and have to go through a bunch of Joe Schmo quarterbacks to get to the Super Bowl is just realist or just really crazy if they can actually get to that point.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I
I,
think it's super realistic that that happens. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't. There's one, two good quarterbacks in the NFC. I would say right now, and one of them, if Tom Brady has to play them in prime time, it's Tom Brady's going to win. So that should narrow down who I'm talking about. But the NFC is just overall so terrible uh, this season. It's honestly hard to watch at times. Um, we saw Green Bay pick up a win the other day against Dallas. First of all, in a game they had no right in being in. Dallas dominated that game up and down, and then they just decided to stop playing in the middle of the fourth quarter for some reason. And Aaron Rodgers somehow kind of lucks his way back into a victory. Um, but yeah, no, back to the Bills. If I'm looking at their division right now, they're tied with the Jets. The Jets have the tiebreaker. I think the Jets are a dumpster fire waiting to happen. I don't understand how they made it to this point in the season with Zach Wilson playing as bad as he has. Maybe that's just the NFL shtick this year is we're gonna have really bad quarterbacks win a lot of games. Um, because I mean, you look at his numbers; he is not playing well at all. He's not turning the ball over, which is the key. But you know, he's not putting up multiple touchdown games. He's letting that team carry him, and I don't see that lasting too much longer, if I'm being honest. And so I think the Bills definitely jump them. But the Dolphins look overall really good, especially with Tua back now. Um, and so I think that the Dolphins are going to end up winning this division, but we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, they have some tough games coming up a little bit later in the season. As far as the AFC South, just as we suspected, nobody wants to win the division. Somehow, Indianapolis won this past week, but now they get Philly at home. And so, but I did see the thing where there is a way that both, not just the NFC or the AFC, where both you know, conferences can get all 4 teams in the East divisions into the playoffs, which I think would be absolutely stupid to watch, but I hope it happens, honestly, at this point. Like, I want that to happen so badly, and so we're gonna have to wait and see. Um, but, you know, some other surprising teams, I believe does Cleveland get Deshaun back this week,
next
or is
week,
it
I
next
believe it's
next week?
next week.
Um,
Yeah,
Yeah,
he can
it's this
practice
week,
this week, but he can't play till next.
that's
and
pretty
they're gonna get the snow this week against the Bills.
yeah. So I mean, when he comes back, they're sitting at 3-6 right now. I'm just gonna go on a limb here and say they're gonna be 3-7 going in the next week. They get Tampa Bay at home with Deshaun back. No, excuse me, he won't be back for that game either. Because his first game back is against Houston. I remember them making a big deal about that.
Oh
So
yeah,
he's
that's right.
Uh,
Oh yeah, because it's an 11-game suspension. So yeah, he'd come back
yeah.
week
Okay.
12. Wait. So yeah, that should be not this week,
I
but
don't know.
next week. Whatever.
You're asking the wrong guy. But yeah. So I mean, there's a lot that can happen in that division as well because the Ravens look like the best team in the league sometimes, and then they go out and they look awful. Uh, the Bengals are floating. I think the Bengals are going to be a 500 team this year. They're sitting at 5-4 right now. I grossly overestimated the Steelers. Uh, this might be Mike Tomlin's first ever losing season because they are dog shit, to say the least.
No, no, no.
Um,
You said this is the year of horrible quarterbacks winning games. So I mean, Justin Fields and Kenny Pickett must be the best quarterbacks they got out there because
no,
they're
they
doing
got to
the
put
exact
Mitch back out
opposite.
there. They need to put Mitch back out there, and then they'll win.
Mitch plays for the other team. He throws the ball to the opposite color jerseys.
Yeah, he's bad, and so if they put him in, they'll win. That's the point. Um, but yeah, I mean, to talk about my Bears for a second, I mean, I have hope for this team in the future. We need to heavily invest in some defense in the offseason, though, and obviously some offensive linemen. I can't believe Justin Fields is still alive, honestly. Um, so, I mean, and then the NFC West, I think the Seahawks are going to kind of, like I said with the Jets, they're going to start to fall apart here a little bit. We saw it against Tampa Bay in the Germany game. Geno Smith can only carry this team so far. The 49ers have really turned a corner, especially since they got McCaffrey. They stumbled that first week with him, but since then, they've looked really, really good. I think they'll continue to trend up, and I think they're going to win the division simply because the Rams and the Cardinals suck. Kyler Murray is trash. Now new Call of Duty's out, so you can Warzone 2 just dropped this week. I would give it.
Cardinals lost. Book it.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would say they lose this week. Probably next week too, honestly, just because I hate Kyler Murray that much. Yeah, I have zero words of how to describe what is going on with the Rams, and I'm not even going to try to. So with that note, Slade would like us to build a parlay together, because apparently he hasn't had enough of losing money, and so he wants. I guess he just wants to blame all of us for losing.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
No,
So
we need to
Slade,
get back on the winning streak.
yeah, well that's
We
just
need
not
to
going to happen.
start it like on a nothing bet during the week so that we don't all lose our money on college football Saturday.
Yeah.
See, I've been doing all right on Saturdays. It's the Sundays that have been. I've came out of the last 2 Saturdays even for the weekend with my Sunday bet sitting there, and then ended the weekend even. Actually, I lied. This week I won $2.75 on Sunday, and I felt like $1 million. Sometimes you just got to see it go through the net. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's more than I won. So Slade, I'll give you my first. I'm going to take Chicago +3 at Atlanta. This is going to be a horrible game, but I don't know. I got a little bit of faith with their offense right now. I can see us losing on like a last second field goal to lose by 1. Or I mean, the last time we played in Atlanta blew like a 20-point lead. So I wouldn't mind seeing that again. So I'm going to take Chicago +3. That's a 1 o'clock game. Let me get a late game.
How
So
do
I can
we?
let.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just gonna say so everybody else's bets can lose, and then mine can not be the one that costs us this. Let me see what's the over under in this game. Oh, give me the over 50 in the Kansas City Chargers game, and those will be my 2.
That's
Over
not bad.
50.5.
Sure. Because God knows if it's just 50, it's definitely gonna hit 50.
So I'm taking the Browns Bills under 41.5. It's supposed to snow like 6 foot of snow in Buffalo this weekend. No, I think it's actually anywhere from 8 to 12 inches, and it's supposed to happen about 2 hours before the game. So we're just gonna get that, normal yearly video of the dudes out there with shovels instead of a fucking machine on AstroTurf out there. They just have like 100 dudes out there with the shovels pushing the snow off the grass.
That could be like, what game was that on Saturday? Was it at Arkansas?
Yeah, those Arkansas.
Yeah, with like the sheet of ice over their field, and
Yeah.
they had no
No.
idea what to do about
They
it.
sprayed water on it to try and melt
yeah,
it.
that's
they
right,
caused the sheet of ice.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
one thing I hate.
There was frost, and so they
You
thought
can't
that they
tell
would
me
just
out of
wash it
like,
off.
you have a whole literal community of intelligent people, and not one of them looked at you. I know it's Arkansas, but I'm
That's
just
a big
assuming
word to use for
there's a
Arkansas. That's where
yeah.
John Daly came from. So
I'm assuming
that's
but
Chilla with
he's
the
a legend.
intelligent.
All right, yeah.
I'm not saying he's not, but I would not go as far as to say
They
intelligent.
have to have at least some out of state coming in
No,
there, but
I'm not. I'm not kidding you. People in the South are so stupid with snow. It is ungodly. Last year here in Charlotte, we got a dusting of snow. Okay, and then there was freezing rain and sleet coming behind it. So the northern brain in me goes, okay, I want to shovel and salt, so that way when the freezing rain comes through, I'm not walking on sheet ice. The looks I was getting from my neighbors, it'll melt tomorrow. That's cool. I gotta go to work today. Like I need to leave. I'm not walking up and down. First of all, I live on a hill. I'm not walking up and down a hill all day. Uh, and then nobody can drive. Absolutely nobody can drive. Even if it's not even laying on the ground. You think rain is bad? You see a snow flurry. I literally saw a guy drive across 4 lanes just to get off on the exit because a snow flurry fell. People down
Funny.
here don't understand like how to even remotely function with a flurry, let alone a light dusting. Oh, let's spray water on it. That'll help. Yeah, no, I am not shocked that they were dumb enough to do that.
So funny story about when Zurich was down there for college in North Carolina, and it was like the first time in like 8 years it had snowed over a couple inches, and it was like 5 inches of snow that it put down, and they didn't have snowplow trucks, they didn't have like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So it's basically a golf cart with like this spinning brush thing on the front. I'm sure you've seen it before,
Hmm.
but yeah, they just had like 10 or 15 of them going around town trying to get 4 or 5 inches of snow off off the roads.
oh boy.
Didn't work out.
Yeah, no, there's no plow trucks down here. They don't even salt the roads. They spray that calcium stuff
Mm.
before the storm, and then they hope that does it, which obviously does nothing. But the funny part last year is everybody's like, "Oh, it'll melt tomorrow. It's fine." It didn't melt for 4 days because it just kept getting colder each day. And then the people that refused to shovel their sidewalks or their driveways, it just kept refreezing, and then they had to go out in the morning and break all the ice off and all this other stuff. I put an ad out on Nextdoor saying, "Hey, $20, I'll come shovel your driveway." And then again, I had like 2 people the first day answer me. Second day, I had like 2 more people, and then the third day, everybody's like, "Okay, I don't think this is ever gonna melt." I'm like, "No shit. I'll come shovel it,
Maybe
but
listen to the guy that just
it's
moved
not
from up north. I don't know.
$20 anymore." So I'll let you guys continue building your parlays.
Nick, we'll go
Good
with
stuff.
your 2. I just wanted to pick the Browns and Bills under there before just in case that was one of yours.
No, you're good. You're good. So the first one, I'm gonna take Philly -6.5 at Indianapolis. I think they are. Well, I think that we kind of showed a blueprint to the NFL of how to slow them down. I don't think that that's going to work every week for everybody. And the Colts is definitely a team that I don't think it's going to work for. Our defense has stepped up tremendously lately, and I don't think that the Colts defense is going to play anywhere near that. We held AJ Brown to 1 catch for 7 yards. I imagine he's probably going to be mad and go off. I think the whole team is going to be upset that that happened and is going to come out firing. And I don't think the Colts are going to be able to slow them down. Um, and for my second one, I'm still looking because I haven't decided on a second one yet. There's some weird games going on this weekend. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead. No, I'm not. I said wasn't gonna do it, so I'm not gonna do that. I lied. Give me the Giants money line at home against Detroit. I like that.
All right. So, did you guys see the video of them asking Jason Kelsey what his thoughts were on the loss and if he felt like the 17-0 rumors were going throughout the locker room? Because before they did interview him, they interviewed AJ Brown, and AJ Brown was like, "I'm so glad we lost because now I don't have to hear about 17-0 the rest of the season. Like this is just awesome. Now we can just focus." And then they go like a couple lockers down. They're like, "Jason Kelsey, how do you feel about this? Like, do you feel like there's a weight that's been lifted off of your back now that there's no 17-0 in thoughts?" He's like, no, I don't like the loss at all."
Listen, when him and I forget who all it was, but when him and the two other guys put out that Christmas album, I thought they were going 17-0. I thought that was it. I thought they were about to run the table because when your center partakes in making a Christmas album, that's all I would need as a team member.
Yeah,
I would.
my favorite clip of him from this week after the loss was him and his brother. Are they brothers? Yeah, they're brothers.
Yeah.
Travis Kelsey. They do a podcast together, and they put it out, and they're like, "Travis, how do you feel?" Or Jason, how do you feel? And he just screamed "fuck" at the top of his lungs for like a solid 30 seconds. It was hilarious. Which I mean, I hate the Eagles, but I can't help but love that man. He is so funny
Oh,
to
he's such
watch.
a good guy.
And so, but let's go ahead. Let's move
Well,
over to college football. No,
the
I'm
last
sorry.
pick of our parlay, sorry, was the Ravens at -720. So a $5 bet here wins us $125 if it wins out.
How is somebody minus 720?
I think.
It's the Baltimore Ravens money line against the Carolina Panthers. That's why.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like they were favored. Like
I thought the
I
same thing
heard,
at first, and I was like, I think he's thinking money line.
and I was like, I'm sorry. Like, okay.
-720. That's a bit weird, but
And I was like, they're just doing decimals now. They expect somebody to just score half a
yeah.
point somehow.
They
Um,
expect the Panthers to just do that bad that they score 720 points more than them.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would not be surprised. Uh, let's go ahead. Let's move into college football. Let's look at the updated college football top 25 playoff rankings. First of all, screw you, Michigan State and Kentucky, for making us wait another hour to see this shit last night. That was ungodly. And yes, I did not forget about the swear jar, but it's it's already full at this point. We're just gonna keep throwing money at it. Um, Georgia State is the number one team. Top four stayed exactly the same. TCU after they survived Texas, in an ugly football game. Um, and we're gonna talk about the game in a minute. I'm not gonna get into it because I'll just start ranting. TCU with a home win. LSU jumps. USC moves up. Alabama and Clemson also move up. Utah moves up. Penn State, with with all due respect to you guys, and I mean this in the least offensive way, Penn State is not the number 11 team in the country.
We're going to the
Oregon's
ship.
not number 12. Oregon's not
Yep.
as number 12. And I don't want you to take it that way, but Penn State is not number 13. In my eyes, North Carolina deserves to be higher. They are a one-loss team. Their one loss is to a ranked team. And first of all, how the hell is Notre Dame 18? But that's another discussion. Um, Oregon is 12, North Carolina 13. Ole Miss is 14th after they lost to Alabama. Kansas State is 15th after getting a huge bounce back win. UCLA drops to 16th. I think they should have dropped farther for losing to a 3-win Arizona team at home. Washington jumps up to number 17 after getting that big win over Oregon on the road. Notre Dame, they barely beat Navy. For some reason, they just decided that I guess the game ended at halftime. I think they had 20 yards of offense in the second half, they said. So that's not good. Number 19, Florida State, with a huge win over Syracuse. UCF with a big win over Tulane jumps them in the rankings. Tulane falls to 21st. Oklahoma State is 22nd. They figured out how to win again, which is nice to see. Oregon State 23rd, NC State 24th, and Cincinnati is 25th. So yeah, I gave my piece. I think North Carolina should be higher. I think Penn State should be lower. But I want to get your guys' thoughts. Slade, we'll start with you.
So just to kind of like, obviously, I don't think that they should even rank anyone that has zero chance of making the college football playoff. Like, I understand that they have to, but I mean, it's just unrealistic to see Penn State, Oregon, Washington, UCLA, a lot of these teams up there at all because it's like, oh, it makes it seem as if they have some sort of chance when there's no chance. I mean, I feel like they should just be ranked in the top 10. Those are the only ones that have any chance of making the playoffs, barring any random losses in the next couple weeks or anything like that. I think the only reason that North Carolina has been fighting to get up there is because they can't win a game by more than 3. I mean, someone should just take the points against them every time for spread wise because the only team that they've beaten by more than like 3 points this year is Virginia Tech, and that doesn't say a lot. Um, it I mean, unless you count FAMU or something like that, whatever team they played, like, I mean, they same as Penn State, they played a JV team their first game of the season, and so,
All right, no,
um
you do not disrespect Florida A&M like that. They had 30 players. They flew up to North Carolina, and they were winning that game at one point. You do not disrespect them by calling them a JV team.
And I think
They
that was
got
like
that.
week 2. Didn't they play App State week
That was
1?
week 0. That was
no,
week 0,
Oh,
and I made about
yeah.
50 memes about Florida A&M having
Yeah,
that
you did.
dog in them, only for
Having
them to actually crap the bed in the second half. But hey,
Yeah.
they flew up there with like 15 kids on the COVID list. So you do not disrespect them in this household.
Oh,
Yeah,
boy.
so that was week 0. App State was week 1. It was like 62-61 or something like that, but, I just think that the
Yeah,
reason
they
why they're at
returned the
13 is
onside kick.
because they What's that?
I said that's when they returned the onside kick.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that I think that it's hard to put them into the top 10 knowing that they haven't been able to put a touchdown spread on any team aside from the team that is 20 men down, FM FAMU. So it's just difficult. It was heartbreak for Georgia's Oregon Ducks, but I mean, it was a pretty good game leading up to the very end there. It was just
Well, it was a great game. Yeah.
it was just rough to see. I mean, I'm anxious. George, you probably listen to Oregon's Twitter and stuff like that. Have you heard anything? Like, has anything come out? Because a lot of people were saying that Bo Nix is on the sidelines jumping up and down saying, "I need to get in the game. I need to get in the like, I'm fine. My ribs, whatever, back, whatever was hurting is fine." And they just ran the damn play. What are your
No,
thoughts there?
I mean, Bo hasn't come out. Obviously, Bo is very well reserved. He has not come out and said anything negative about the play. Yes, but he was ready to go back in. He wanted to. Um, but I understand, not taking that time out. Hey, this kid was a highly touted recruit. Yeah, he struggled at times when he has gotten to go in, but that play is not on him. First of all, the running back slipped, yes, but the offensive line let a defensive end come straight through. Even if Bo was in there, yeah, I understand he did like 3 QB sneaks before that on 4th and short to get it. I would have liked to have seen that. But in my eyes, I understand going for it there. I wish anytime you're in your own side of the field, I always struggle comprehending going for it on 4th down, but I understand with just how poorly our defense had played. Leading up to that, the drive before that, they drove down the field in like 30 seconds. It seemed like, and so I understand. Hey, they're either gonna get the ball right here, and then our defense showed up, made a stop, and then we just not enough time to get the ball moved down the field, or at least close enough to send it to overtime. Um, so, yeah, I mean, difficult to watch, but there's so many things from that game where like, well, if they would have done this, and that's how you always feel after a loss. Like, hey, if this one play would have gone differently, there was I don't understand why the missed interception call was not reviewed. I understand Washington ran up there, but you can't tell me there's any way the booth had enough time to look at that play on the fly and say, yep, that's a catch or that's an interception, so on and so forth. That should have absolutely been reviewed. You look at that replay enough times afterwards, and I call it an interception. I understand I have a little bit of bias, but he has it in his hands. He goes to the ground, and once they hit the ground, the receiver rips it away from him, and they call it a catch for the receiver. I don't understand that at all. I think that's a little bit of BS, but again, it's one of those games where it's like, okay, well, if this would have went differently, we would have won. If this would have went differently, we would have won. But you can look at the same thing the other way. If this would have went differently, we lost that game by 30 points. Our defense was so pathetic the entire night. I mean, I can't believe that we had a almost 10-point lead at one point late in the fourth quarter. But we absolutely should have closed that game out a lot better. I'm just glad Bo is healthy. Hey, we have a difficult opponent this week coming in again with Utah. If we win out, we're still heading to the Pac-12 championship game. We still have a route in front of us to get there, and so we just need to focus on Utah this week. It's going to be tough. We have so much bad blood from getting our ass beat twice by them last year. Now we need to beat them. Let's get back up to the pinnacle. Let's go, to Las Vegas in a few weeks. I mean, we have Oregon State in 2 weeks, who is now ranked again, and we got to travel there this year. So I mean, it's going to be a difficult 2 weeks. I talked about a week ago. This is a rough 3-week stretch for Oregon. This is going to prove how good this team has become since that Georgia loss. And so I'm excited to see us get back to work this week. The only thing I hate is that it's a stupid 10:15 p.m. kickoff. I can't believe they put a ranked matchup that late on ESPN, but I mean, you gotta fill time slots somehow, I
And
guess.
and can
Uh,
can we just talk about how, like you said, the next 3 weeks, and if we count this past week, so we're saying 4 weeks of just brutal schedule for Oregon, and that you
mhm.
got TCU who basically has the same damn thing. It's like, uh, we got teams like Michigan that I mean, they played their first hard game, which, I mean, you can't consider a hard game because they whooped Penn State up and down the field, and so their only hard game of the season is going to be, what, in 2 weeks against Ohio State?
Yeah. I mean, they
So,
they do play Illinois this week, which I'm I'm
They're on the
surprised.
down spiral right now because
I
we just
understand.
rode the horse too long.
I'm just saying, if I look at these rankings, and I know we haven't let Nick talk a lot here, but if I'm looking at these rankings, one thing that's sticking out to me that I'm staring at it, how the hell is Oklahoma State back in the rankings? Not just back in the rankings, but all the way up to 22nd. This is a team that got their ass kicked the last 2 weeks, and now all of a sudden, actually, here, let me go back and look at this properly so I get. So they lose to TCU by 3 in double overtime. They beat Texas at home. They get throttled 48 to nothing by Kansas State. They drop down to 18th. They get throttled by Kansas 37 to 16. They're out of the rankings. They beat a four win Iowa State team by 6 points this week. And somehow this committee is like 22, and we're going to put them there. When Illinois has crapped the bed the last 2 weeks, and I 100% agree with that. I mean, it was a great game this past weekend with Purdue, and that is also a rivalry game. I understand it's not as high class of a rivalry like Alabama Auburn or Alabama LSU or Michigan Ohio State, games like that, but it's still a rivalry game. It still brings a lot of emotions to the table. It's still two teams that are fighting for a chance to win the Big Ten West when one of those teams we thought was done for 3 weeks into the season. I don't understand how you could take a look at that game or that team in Illinois and say, yeah, Oklahoma State is just that much better on them on paper. Like, I understand if you put them head to head, I would say Oklahoma State probably wins that game. But the last 3 weeks, looking at those two teams, I would still put Illinois from the eye test and resume alone ahead of Oklahoma State in my eyes. And the last thing I'll say before I let Nick talk finally, you said there's no point in ranking outside the top 10. I mean, first of all, every other ranking system does it, but in my eyes, it matters so much because you're still looking at New Year's Six bowls. Okay, we need the highest ranked non-Power 5 team. They're going to get put into the New Year's Six bowl. It overall, and it helps for your resume as well. If you look at Georgia right now, they've beat a top 10 team in Tennessee. They have beat a top 15 team in Oregon and so on and so forth. So you need these top 25 rankings. So at the end of the year, if something were to happen, let's say Georgia's a one-loss team. We have 4 one-loss teams staring at each other at the end of the season, okay? And we need to sit there and go, okay, who gets in, who gets out? Are you conference champion? Okay, well, conference champion, yep, you're in, okay, whatever. But if we're fighting for that last spot, and I understand, yeah, it does get kind of stupid, and we're sitting here arguing about a 22nd ranked team. But at the same time, I would rather sit here and go, okay, TCU deserves to be in because they beat a 22nd ranked team. And honestly, maybe that's why they put Oklahoma State back in. And so TCU just has another top 25 win. I mean, when they beat them, they were a top 25 team, and that should still count as a top 25 win. But maybe that's just why they're flexing it a little bit. Talking a lot, Nick. I'm sorry. You can go ahead and give us your thoughts, buddy.
No, you're good. So, kind of to piggyback off of what Slade said, as far as outside the top 10, judging by this list here, I could see the argument for the first 9. I'll allow Alabama and Clemson to be in there, as much as I don't think either one of them are top 10 teams in this country. And then you start at 10 and you're at Utah. I do not think Utah has played like a top 10 team really at any point this season, maybe for a few minutes in a quarter here or there, but definitely not the same Utah team that we expected to see. But really, from 10 on, it kind of just seems like they threw people in. Like you said, I don't think that Penn State is number 11. Now, I get it. Our defense at this point in the season is playing absolutely great ball. We just shut out Maryland. But the offense and its inconsistency, more Sean Clifford's inconsistencies, it definitely hinders us. But at the same time, as I'm looking at it, like, it's really hard for me to put gaps in between some of these teams, just because of how inconsistently a lot of these teams outside of the top 10 or outside of the top 9 have played. Just to touch on North Carolina a little bit, um, Slade made a good point as far as not winning games, by touchdowns or anything like that. But I think this is a team that has proven that they at least belong in the top 10. I don't think that they're a playoff team at this point. I don't think they deserve to be even sniffing a playoff, but I do think that they're playing, and their record shows them being a top 10 team compared to some of these other teams on here that have 2, maybe 3 losses. But it definitely, outside that top 9, to me, just looks like they said, yeah, we think that these teams could be in the top 25 of the country. Let's just throw them all around somewhere, and everybody will be so focused on the top 6, top 7 that they won't care. Which kudos to us, I guess, for giving a shit and sitting here arguing about something that means absolutely nothing to the college football season. But here we are. That's why we do this thing every week. So
But just back to the North Carolina argument again. Yeah, you're not winning games by a lot, and I understand that you would like flashiness. You would like 48 to nothings that some of these other schools are putting up. Um, but at the end of the day, they are doing what they need to get the win. They are going to difficult environments. They're winning games. Traveling to Wake Forest in a what should have been a top 25 matchup had Wake Forest been able to play competent football the last few weeks. And it's a night game. I understand. I watched a little bit of that game, flipping back and forth from the Oregon game. They absolutely controlled Wake Forest for 3 quarters of that game, and finally towards the end, Wake Forest kind of woke up a little bit and made it a game. Um, but I don't think you can go out there and argue and say, "Hey, you're only winning by 3." And so that's a reason to hold you a little bit lower. I understand that's what the committee's doing. I'm just saying I don't agree with it. And I think as a one-loss team that is going to an ACC championship game, it is locked in. They are gonna play Clemson in a few weeks. They should absolutely be getting a little bit more respect. Again, I if I put North Carolina and Penn State on a field right now, I think North Carolina wins that game. Just for the fact I think Drake May is one of the best quarterbacks in the country right now. The UNC offense is one of the best in the country. Penn State's defense, we have hyped them up a lot, and I understand they have played much better the last few weeks. But the game in my mind that continues to stick out is the Michigan game. I felt like Penn State's defense looked really good going to that game, and all of a sudden Michigan ran all over them. In my eyes, whenever I look at Penn State facing a difficult opponent, they have lost both of those games. They got blown out in one of them, and I mean, shout out to them for being able to keep that Ohio State game as close as it was. But I think towards the middle of the fourth quarter to the end of that game, we saw how good Ohio State really was, and I don't want to say how bad Penn State is, but just kind of the gap in those two teams and why Ohio State is so successful and why Penn State continues to struggle. And it's just the gap in those two teams. If Penn State plays that game all the way out to the end, I have no problem keeping them a little bit above or higher in the rankings. Um, that's just my argument for putting North Carolina above them. I think my top 10, first of all, I would put Utah above USC for the fact that they beat USC head to head. I understand they had a couple stumbles in the middle of their season, but I still think Utah is a better team for the simple fact that they beat USC. So I would put Utah at 7 and not USC, and then I would put North Carolina at 10. Those would be the only two tweaks in the top 10 I would make. Um,
Um, so here's the thing though, like with if we just don't look at anyone outside the top 10, there's no point in even arguing whether North Carolina goes in and beats Penn State by 15 points because neither of them are in the top 10. So like I that's why I don't think they should even rank outside the top 10 or at least to the point where they're differentiating. Like I think that they should just put all these teams out there and say, "Okay, this is 11 through 25." Because I don't think that you could even differentiate like I don't know, USC against Penn State. Like USC might be able to beat Penn State by 3 and I mean they're at 19. So I find it hard and the same thing with Oregon State. I mean, Oklahoma State. The only reason they're in there is because the committee wants it to be shown that either Kansas State or Oklahoma State will play who? TCU, right?
yeah.
So, I mean, they're tied right now with Kansas State having the tiebreaker over them because of the win. So, I mean, it's just their way of getting these ranked matchups in the bowl game, or I mean, in the conference championship games. It's all for nothing. It doesn't mean anything, and I feel like they just do this every year. I mean, I don't think that Clemson or North Carolina should be in the top 10. So that's but they just have to have one of them in there because then at the end of the season when they do the top 10, you got to see that the ACC champion was ranked in the top 10 and the Pac-12 champion was ranked in the top 10. And so it's just like I don't know, that's why I feel that nobody should be ranked outside the top 10.
But it's a double-edged sword, though. If you look at this and say none of these other teams should be ranked, well, then
By the
again,
committee is what I mean.
I,
I'm fine with the
I
8
understand.
people
I
ranking them
understand.
because
I'm
it's
just
8
saying,
people voting, but
yeah, and I understand. But I'm first of all, I mean, I think the AP poll is worse than this. Obviously, this top 25 is very flawed. Yes, but when they put out who the people in the AP poll are voting for each week, and they say how they ranked each individual ranked, which I would love if the college football playoff committee could just do that. You say, hey, this is where so and so had this. I understand. I believe if I'm understanding correctly, the way they have it work is they don't leave that room until every single person in there agrees. Okay, this team is one and two and so on and so forth. Um, the AP poll is just kind of averaging. Okay, we had so many first place votes, so many second place, whatever. Uh, but just the amount of stupid people that I see ranking. But just back to saying that top 10 doesn't matter. It's such a double edged sword though because let's just give you a hypothetical. We're looking at Penn State at 5 and Tennessee at 4, and you're arguing back and forth over which team is better. And let's say Tennessee has one team here in the top 25 that they beat. Penn State has two. If you don't have those teams ranked past 10, then there's you lose a lot of basis for your argument. You say, yeah, they have an AP team, a AP top 25 team, whatever. But I don't. I feel like the committee kind of holds himself in a higher regard that they
But
know.
where's the basis to put Oklahoma State at 22 then? Other than the fact that just because they're 3rd in the Big 12, that's where I guess and this is gonna get so tricky. I wanted them to open up the championship games here or whatever the committee to picking for 16 teams for a bracket at the end of the season for a playoff. But
Mhm.
now with the way that these rankings are, I don't want them to do that. I mean, I can't differentiate a Penn State versus UCLA or Kansas State or Ole Miss or whoever, like I think that Ole Miss plays a harder schedule than Penn State. I think that they should realistically be ranked ahead of Penn State in my opinion, but they're not. So how are you going to put Ole Miss against who would they go against Michigan if it was a 16 team playoff and then Penn State gets to go against like Tennessee or something like that, you know?
Mhm.
It's just going to be so difficult if they can't differentiate between I mean, I just don't know. I don't know their ranking system, but it just seems like you had said, it's flawed. And it's gonna be very difficult to see them rank outside of 10. And the reason why I say 10 is because I understand what you're saying in 4 and 5 and seeing the ranked wins and stuff, but
Mhm.
the reason why that works is because only 4 make it into the playoff. So
Yeah.
differentiating 4 and 5 is a big difference from 10 to 25.
I think that we should get away from polls. I think that the college football playoffs. So is it 16 teams? I know they're expanding it in 2024. Is
12.
it
They're
16 or
looking
12?
at 12.
12. Okay. So just say 12. So in my opinion, just to spice things up a bit, I know some people are going to be against this, but I think that it would add a little excitement, a little flavor to the college football playoffs. I think that the 10 conference winners across FBS 1A should automatically get in. So then you have two spots to decide that you would have, like, say, example for this year would be for Michigan and Tennessee, for example. Like, whatever, the next two top teams would be. Obviously, I guess you would still need some sort of ranking system. But I just think that if you win your conference, like, especially if you're going to expand it this far, like, I know what everybody's thinking, oh, with these group of five schools, yada, yada, yada. I think that there would be a lot of group of five schools that would come in, maybe not necessarily against like the Georgias or the Ohio States, but could come in, for some of, say, like the LSUs, USCs, or whatever that might be in there, could come in and compete and put up a good game. I know that they're probably not going to win a whole lot, but when we look at, say, March Madness and, with the NCAA basketball, there are teams that come in and upset number one, number two, number three seeds. So that's what I think, because I think these polls every year just get more and more inconsistent. Um, Usually now, like the CPF poll, like, that we're looking at here in front of us, usually the top four, I can't really argue much about. Um, usually that's pretty good. But I think once we get to 12 teams here, kind of like you said, Slade, like some of these teams are going to be very hard to differentiate. Like, okay, well, how much better are they actually? Is a USC over a Penn State or whatever. So that's just my opinion. I know
Do
it'll
you
never
guys
get to that, but
Do you guys realistically think that Penn State and Oregon should be in over North Carolina if we're looking at a 12-team playoff? Like,
No.
that's what would happen if this ended
Yeah.
today.
no,
No.
yeah.
Yeah. That's but so this is why it's difficult to talk about how much we hate some of these rankings because years ago we had the BCS rankings and everybody knew from top to bottom they were ass. And so we begged for years and years and years for something different. And then we got this. And the first couple years were okay, but now you're starting to see more and more flaws with this. Is there a better way than this out there? Absolutely. And we can switch, we can go to a different route, and then we're gonna sit there 3 years later and go, well, this sucks too. Like I feel like it is so difficult. There's so many different ways to do this, and listen, do I hate these rankings? Absolutely. Do I think I should be on this committee? No. I think they have the toughest job in all of college athletics. I feel like the selection committee for the 64 team bracket is so much easier because 90% of the bracket is filled out by conference winners. Like you don't care about who just won the American or what the Mid Ohio Conference or whatever. They automatically get to go, and 90% of your bracket's filled out. And I feel like there's so much less controversy with that because you're just like, oh, okay, well, yeah, you're in, whatever. Um, one thing I will say about that is, first of all, if you win your conference, you should not get put in a play-in game, but that's a discussion for a different day. Um,
I
I'm,
I say, go ahead. I wasn't sure.
back to expanding it to 12. I said this when we had our week 1 show of Out of the Tunnel. They announced it just before that they were going to 12 teams. 12 is the stupidest number that they could have picked. I think it is absolutely dumb. I think the dream scenario, in my eyes, if I could, control these playoffs, whatever, you expand it to 8 teams. That is your Power Five. Your Power Five conference champions. That's 5 teams already filled it up. That's your ACC, American, Big 10, Big 12, SEC, Impact 12. No, excuse me, the American's not in there. But then what you do is you look at so you have 3 open bids essentially. I think the top group of 5, team wherever they're ranked should get in. They get a playoff bid, and then you get 2 essentially wild card spots, or however you want to say it. I mean, you look at the NFL bracket, just half the teams. I think that would be the best way to go. But again, is there a better solution than that out there? Yeah, absolutely. And we could sit here and argue this for the next 3 hours probably about, how dumb are these rankings, how inconsequential some of them are, and what better ways there are to improve it. I mean, we've tried doing our own rankings, and yeah, it's fun to do, but at the same time, damn, all right, this is hard, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm sitting here, I'm using, and we're using numbers and strength of schedule and all this other stuff, and somehow Alabama is still the number 4 team in the country, even though they lost 2 games. But on the other hand, they lost those 2 games by combined 4 points. So I mean, it's I don't think there's any perfect way out there to do this. And again, like I said, I'm not disagreeing with where Slade's coming from or where Nick's coming from. I'm just I don't envy these people at all, is what I'm saying. And again, we could sit here and argue, if Oregon State is ahead of Oklahoma State, or if Tulane shouldn't even be ranked anymore, and so on and so forth. Um, yeah,
I think that, just to piggyback off of what I said a little bit earlier, I think that whether you do 8 teams and have a couple extra bids, after the Power Five, or you do 10 and you take all the conference winners, um, I I think that something like that is what would be in the sport's best interest, because you think about it now, like the majority of the schools, the Georgia, the Ohio State, the Alabama, those teams, they're the ones getting the majority of the big recruits. Why? Because these recruits want to play for good teams. They want to win national championships. I think if even if you don't do just the conference championships, I think some sort of expansion is needed, because that's going to allow players to be more free with where they decide to go. Now, yeah, I know there's other factors like NIL and stuff like that, but I think that it gives more, like, a lot of players are going to say, yeah, I want to go to Georgia. Why? Because Georgia has the best chance of winning the national championship. Where if you expand it to 8, 10, 12, whatever, you do give more teams a chance at that. So I think that overall could be better for the sport. But again, to sit here and say that this idea or the way that it is would be perfect, like, obviously we're humans. We're never happy about anything, especially when it comes to sports and football. Whatever.
My last rant about football here, quick, is why 12 teams? Is there going to be 2 playing games? Because no team should be getting a damn bye in the playoffs of this. I'm sorry, but Ohio State, Alabama, those teams don't even want to sit out a week. I don't
Yeah.
understand. I mean, it should have been 8, and I feel like that's what it should have been. But I'm anxious to see how they end up formatting this, because there's going to either be the first and second seed get a bye, or there's going to be 4 teams playing in 2 playoff games, basically, like playing games. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. There was such an easy solution in front of them of either going with 8 or going with 16, and they just pulled a number out of their ass and said,
12.
"No, we're gonna go with 12." Um, yeah,
Got
I think we're done arguing about college football. I mean, like I said earlier multiple times, we could sit here and argue this for the next 3 hours. Who knows? Maybe we'll do an extended episode of Out of the Tunnel on Saturday where we do that. Um, Before we move on away from college football, I did want to give some remarks quick. Of course, we had the terrible tragedy on Sunday with the University of Virginia. They have canceled their game this weekend against Coastal Carolina. Obviously, our thoughts and prayers go out to all 3 team members who were and their families who were tragically killed. And our thoughts and prayers are with the entire University of Virginia and their football team as well. Hopefully, there's just no words to even say. And so we wish that community healing, and hopefully things can get better from here. Again, it's difficult to say words anymore with just how frequently and unnecessarily this happens. Um, Moving on, this is a terrible segue, but
To save that for
we
last.
yeah, I probably should have.
That's all right.
Maybe that's how I'll edit it. But anyway, we're not going to do a top 5 this week just because it was difficult to come up with 5 of these individually, even though I could probably go on this all night. We're going to debate the things that we hate most about Thanksgiving. Last year, we did our favorite Thanksgiving foods. We wanted to kind of do some Thanksgiving again, but, just got to do the things that we just don't like about Thanksgiving. So, Slade, what don't you like about Thanksgiving?
Hmm. I am a big fan of succotash, and nobody seems to think that that is important for Thanksgiving, which really
That is
irritates me.
disgusting. That is
My
absolutely
mom,
disgusting.
my mom actually makes just a little crock pot of it just for me because nobody else eats it.
You
Oh,
can suck on
that's
my
so
ass
cute.
because that is disgusting.
What about
That's
you
not the
guys?
worst. That's not the worst part about Thanksgiving, though. Anyway, Nick,
For me, it is.
don't
For me, it is.
I
it's
think
bad that you like something about Thanksgiving.
I think the
No,
best
I'm
part
mad
about
that.
Thanksgiving is the fact that there's not succotash on the table when I sit down. But anyway, so I have a bigger one here. We talked about it a little before the show. I think it's going to be controversial. But before I say that, um, a small one that I think is more popular, and more widely accepted is the fact that turkey is the main meat on Thanksgiving. Get that shit out of here. Give me the ham. But no, my thing, one of my probably my worst thing about Thanksgiving, is the Thanksgiving Day parade. And listen, I get it. I used to watch it every single year as a kid. But as I've grown up, first of all, parades in general have kind of, gone past me, quite figuratively and literally. Um, but it's a big waste of time. Uh, just flaunting a bunch of celebrities lip syncing on some floats, that got the Pillsbury Doughboy on it or something. Pikachu's flying down, Times Square. Like it's stupid. It's ridiculous. I get it. The kids enjoy it. Whatever. Send them to fucking Disneyland. I don't care. But it's just I don't want to see it on the TV. Especially if there's some sort of like football pregame show on. Get that shit out of here. Let me get hyped for Thanksgiving football. And quite honestly, I do a lot of traveling on the holidays, and so like to even sit down and have time to watch. Like I don't understand what families do on Thanksgiving to be able to have 3 hours to just sit there and watch a bunch of floats drive on down the fucking street in New York, or wherever the hell they happen to do it. I don't know if it's always in New York. But regardless, it just seems like something that's so unnecessary. Like there are thousands of people there on the floats watching in person, whatever. That could be with their families. If your family's that horrible, don't even celebrate Thanksgiving. Just go to work like a normal person. I don't really have much more to say.
Yeah, no, I put the Thanksgiving parade on like the same pedestal as like the huge New Year's Eve party they do at Times Square. Like it's so unnecessary
Yeah.
for that many people to congregate for no reason.
No.
Like you can go watch it at your house, or you can go to like your local town square, does the same exact thing. Like there's no
Yeah.
reason that Times Square is such a big thing because just because they hit puberty every year and their balls drop it and some fireworks go off and confetti. To me, it is just the dumbest thing to watch every year, and I can't stand either one of them.
I
I
think
used to
real quick,
never.
just because I know you're going to get back into the Thanksgiving here, I just want to talk about. I think New Year's is a waste of fucking time too. You're still going to wake up the next day and be the same piece of shit you were on December 31st.
Your rent's due. Your rent is due
Your
the next day.
Yeah,
Why are
your
you
rent's due.
celebrating
Like
this?
yeah, complete waste of time. I literally I go to parties to party, but other than that, typically I fall asleep before noon because nobody gives a shit. All right, at
Or
12:01, I'm gonna feel 0% different than I did at
Do you mean midnight?
11:59.
Because if you're falling asleep at noon, you and I have some serious questions about your sleeping habits.
No, I have
that
not fallen
and
asleep.
George, don't forget to up the rating on this one because I think we've doubled the swear jar this
We were
podcast.
doing pretty good, but college football, the NFL, and fucking
I'm
Thanksgiving
telling you
got us
right now,
fired up.
whenever we get our random college bowl game we're getting, we're just gonna put a fucking $100 on it because at this point, I think I'm
We
gonna go
have
in
to.
about 30 minutes about my bullshit. But yeah, no, I can't stand New Year's Eve. Like again, I don't mind going to like a friend's house or like just staying at home. 9 times out of 10, though, I just want to fall asleep because the next day is usually the Rose Bowl. I mean, last year obviously Oregon didn't play in it, and that sucked. But hey, I mean, it's pretty good
And the
chance you're gonna make it
midnight
there some
kiss,
years.
these 40s, as kids, I get it. When you're a teenager or your young 20s and
You
you
get
want
a
to do the
midnight
midnight kiss,
blowjob?
first of all, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Step it,
Yeah.
ante up a little bit here. But for the adults that do it, it really has to be midnight on the last day of the year for you to get a kiss from your miserable fucking wife that never kisses you the rest of the year.
It's
Get
supposed
out
to
of
be the
here.
kiss, your first kiss of the year.
Oh, who gives a shit? It's the only one he's gonna get all year.
I mean, I agree 100%. I mean, and this went from Thanksgiving to New Year's real quick.
Yeah.
But,
Who
um,
knew New Year's was gonna get us fired up too? But here we
I
are.
mean, as far as my worst things, I mean, the first one is just your family that gets way too political, especially like the boomers in your family. Well, what do you think about Biden or Trump? I don't care. I'm not here to discuss that with you. I'm here to eat food, and I mean, honestly, sometimes I and back to the turkey real quick.
Oh, here we go.
I hate it. I hate it. I'm not going to try and argue. The reason I hate it is because 90% of you assholes out there don't understand how to flavorfully cook something to keep some juices in it. Every time I eat somebody else's turkey, outside of my aunt Debbie, I would never shame your turkey. Your
Mm.
turkey is the only turkey I will ever eat.
Aunt Debbie. I
Everybody
ain't
else that
never ate
makes
nothing bad
turkey
from Aunt
is
Debbie.
dry as
Mm.
ass, and I cannot stand it. And that's why I hate turkey on Thanksgiving.
You guys would hate turkey, succotash hating assholes.
Listen,
Oh,
ham
I'm
should
sorry that we
be.
weren't at the first
I mean,
Thanksgiving back in
yeah.
1622, and that's why we like succotash at Thanksgiving. Shut the fuck up, you pilgrim eating motherfucker. Let's see. Let's get some other ones I got here. I'm not gonna say that one on here because Hannah's gonna get mad at me if I have to
Mm.
say that. Oh, the other thing I hate about Thanksgiving is having to watch the goddamn Cowboys every year.
Oh yeah.
They either their fans
And the
are
Lions
obnoxious.
while we're at it.
The Lions, I don't mind because every other year it seems like the Bears play them, so I get to watch the Bears at least.
That's fair.
It I don't know, like the Detroit has nothing else. Let's at least let them have the Thanksgiving football game. Um, but yeah, Dallas, I can't stand watching them at 4:30 every Thanksgiving day. It sucks. And the night game is always ass, and
Mhm.
it just helps put you to sleep after eat stuffing your face all day. Um, one thing I do love about Thanksgiving is pumpkin pie, and Hannah
Oh
had
yeah.
some today and didn't bring me any home, so we're a little on edge at this house. If you couldn't tell.
Or any kind of pie, really. I mean, I know you're not much for Cool Whip, but you give me a slice of pie with 2 pounds of Cool Whip on top, and I'm good to go.
Yeah, no, I don't feel like throwing up at Thanksgiving, so that's why I avoid the Cool Whip. Um, I had sweet potato pie for the first time last year. I thought it was pumpkin pie. I ate it, and I
You're like,
swear to
this
God,
is
it tasted.
bland.
It was. I was like, oh, this is weird, but like, I mean, hey, it's pumpkin pie. I'm just happy. And finally, Hannah walks over. She goes, "Why are you eating the sweet potato pie?" First of all, why do they look the same? Like, why did you put no distinguishing features on either of these pies and say pumpkin, sweet
Yeah.
potato? And I would have avoided this whole fiasco, but
I must say that there are good flavored sweet potato pies out there.
I'm not
But
saying that. I've just never been a huge
yeah.
fan of sweet potatoes.
Oh, I love
People that
sweet
eat cranberry sauce, that's disgusting.
So huge thing here. If I used to be like the out of the can smooth cranberry sauce when I was a kid, and then as I grew up
Like your
and
brain,
got cultured, huh?
like your
You say the
brain.
Yeah, kinda. You know what I'm talking about? Out of the
Yes,
can,
I know what you're talking
yeah.
about.
And
How
as
you
I've
get the
grown older,
sweet.
I've matured into the more adult, kind of. I don't know if chunky is the right word. It kind of makes it sound yucky, but chunky
Makes me not
cranberry
like it.
sauce. Yeah, it definitely it's not my favorite, but if somebody happens to throw some on my plate, I'll eat it. But I'm there with you.
I mean, I'm more than content to go to like a Thanksgiving party, and I will let you guys eat whatever you want. Just save me some mashed potatoes, some
Your volume went out.
Yeah, it did. I thought it was me on my end because like everything went silent.
All right. Stuffing's the best food for Thanksgiving.
Stuffing do be good. See, I'm not George. I love sweet potatoes. Especially my dad makes some banging ones with all kinds of extra stuff, not just normal white people potato or sweet potatoes with like a little bit of brown sugar. That shit's busting.
George's computer basically said that I complained about college football so much that there's not enough time to talk about Thanksgiving stuff anymore.
Yeah.
No, we
we
can't hear
can't.
you, George. It's all right.
So,
Nick,
I was say, you want me to just end it?
yeah, I think he wants you to close
Oh,
the podcast now.
all right. Yeah, I guess that's what he's saying. All right, guys. So obviously, thanks for tuning into this. If you, not if you, wake up by 8:30 on Saturdays and tune in to the live college football show. We have a lot of fun on Saturdays bringing that to you. If you happen to miss it, you can catch it afterwards. I don't remember what all George normally says during this, but I think promoting the Saturday
Exciting,
show. What's
exciting
that?
news. 2 weeks. We're all three going to be together for the Out of the Tunnel Saturday morning.
Yes, we are going to be together in 2 weeks for the Out of the Tunnel show. Two of us were supposed to be together this weekend, but it didn't. Actually, all three of us were, but Slade couldn't switch work, and I didn't end up making it. But no, that's definitely going to be a huge blast. Hopefully, a lot of people can tune in. George keeps trying to talk, but I can't read lips, so that's all right. He'll deal with it. Look at his smile over there; it's so beautiful. But yeah, again, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you on Saturday, and then we'll catch you next week.